Welcome back to Revise and Resubmit, the podcast that takes, those really dense academic papers and makes them surprisingly interesting. I'm Pavlov.
And I'm Nikita.
And today, we're getting into some really interesting stuff from a research paper.
Mm-hmm.
This one was actually part of the readings for the virtual summer school in Entrepreneurship Research 2025.
Oh, right. That's a great program.
It really is. And can you believe 2025 is the 5th year for it? Started back in 2021, totally no fee.
That's fantastic. Makes cutting-edge research accessible.
Yeah, they do, like 5 sessions, I think. 4 papers each. Sometimes book review pops in. It's a really solid resource.
Definitely.
And, we should definitely give a shout out to the organizers, Professor Vishal K. Gupta and PhD candidate Athena Skidopoulou.
Absolutely. Both from the University of Alabama. They've done, a remarkable job spearheading that.
Truly commendable work in making that happen.
It is. And it tees up our main question perfectly, doesn't it? You hear all the time about how most new businesses fail.
Constantly. It's almost the default assumption.
So the big question is, how do investors really look at entrepreneurs who've, failed before?
It's such a core question, isn't it? Because your first instinct might be, failure equals bad sign. Avoid.
Right. Seems logical on the surface.
But this paper we're diving into, it paints a much more nuanced picture. It really challenges that simple view.
It really does. The core argument is fascinating. It suggests that past failure isn't like a clear signal that the entrepreneur just isn't skilled.
Okay. How so?
Well, they talk about this asymmetry between failure and success. Think about it. For a venture to succeed, you generally need skill and you need some luck, right? Good timing, market conditions.
Makes sense. Both have to line up, more or less.
Exactly. But failure's different. It could happen because of a lack of skill, sure, making mistakes.
Okay.
Or it could happen because of just plain bad luck. Things totally outside the entrepreneur's control, misfortune, as they put it.
Ah, I see. So success sort of implies skill was probably there along with luck.
Mm-hmm.
But failure. It could be lack of skill, or it could be bad luck, or maybe both. It's fuzzier.
Precisely. It's a much noisier signal, as you said. It doesn't automatically tell you why it failed.
So that's the asymmetry. Failure isn't just the opposite of success in terms of what it signals about the person.
You got it. And this leads to the crunch question for investors, and maybe for anyone evaluating potential.
Like, do they just see failure and run? Simple failure aversion.
Or do they actually dig a bit deeper? Do they look for other clues about the entrepreneur's skill and think, okay, maybe that failure wasn't the whole story? The paper calls this rational inference.
Rational inference. I like that. It suggests a more, thoughtful process.
It does.
And that really matters for you listening in, right? Whether you're an entrepreneur, maybe worried about a past venture or an investor, or just, curious about how this stuff works.
Definitely. How should we think about these past failures when judging future potential? It's clearly not black and white.
Not at all. The research pushes us to look beyond just the outcome.
Yeah, to consider the person, the context, other signals.
Okay, so that's the setup. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll dig into what the study actually found about investor behavior. Stick around. All right, we're back. We've laid out the core puzzle. How do investors handle entrepreneurs with failures on their record? Let's get into the findings. What did this study actually discover?
Okay, so the researchers used experiments primarily looking at equity crowdfunding platforms.
Ah, crowdfunding. That's a good place to test this, I imagine. Lots of decisions, maybe less deep dive info than traditional VC sometimes.
Exactly. That's a really key point. Investors there often have to rely quite heavily on the pitch, the profile, the updates, maybe less opportunity for weeks of due diligence.
Right, so the signals presented, like past failures or skills, become potentially more potent.
Potentially, yes. So they presented investors with different scenarios, entrepreneurs with different track records, success, failure, and crucially, different cues about their skill level.
And what happened? Did the investors just shy away from anyone who'd failed before?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. The results suggested, pretty strongly actually, that investors don't just have this knee-jerk negative reaction to failure.
Right.
They seem to engage in that rational inference we talked about. They actually look at the other information provided, especially information about the entrepreneur's skills.
So they don't just write them off.
It appears not. It suggests they understand, or at least act as if they understand, that failure can be noisy, that it might have been bad luck, not just incompetence.
Okay, that's quite hopeful in a way.
It is. And because of that, they showed they were willing to fund new ventures from entrepreneurs with past failures.
If what?
If there were other credible signals suggesting that entrepreneur actually had strong underlying skills.
Ah, okay. So the failure isn't an automatic deal breaker if there's something else positive to latch onto.
Something skill-related specifically. That seemed to be key.
Did they test specific examples of these skill signals?
Yes, they did. And one that had a really significant effect was using inclusion in Forbes's 30 under 30 list as a skill cue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty strong external validation. It's not about one company succeeding, but about the person's perceived potential, right?
Exactly. It signals talent, drive, innovation, things separate from the outcome of one specific past venture. And finding was that having that kind of credible skill cue significantly reduced the negative impact of having a past failure.
So the 30 under 30 recognition basically helped offset the failed venture perception.
In large part, yes. And they even tested this against other types of information. Like, what if investors were told the failure was likely due to bad luck?
Right, providing an excuse almost.
Kind of. But what they found was that the direct skill cue, like the Forbes list, was much more powerful in changing investor perception than just being told it might have been bad luck.
That's fascinating. So just explaining away the failure isn't as effective as actively demonstrating skill.
It seems so. Evidence of ability trumped explanations for the setback.
Okay, so the practical takeaway there for an entrepreneur with a past failure is don't just make excuses.
Pretty much. Focus on showcasing your skills, your achievements, anything that validates your capabilities now for this new venture. That's what seems to move the needle for investors.
Highlight the positives, the skills, the potential, rather than dwelling on why the last thing didn't work out.
That seems to be the effective strategy based on this research.
And for investors or anyone evaluating, it's a reminder to look deeper than the track record.
Absolutely. Look for those skill signals. Don't let a past failure automatically cloud your judgment about future potential if there's other compelling evidence.
It suggests a level of sophistication, or at least a willingness to consider multiple factors in that crowdfunding space.
Yeah, it pushes back against the idea that it's all just gut feeling or simple pattern matching.
Really interesting stuff. It changes how you might think about risk and second chances in entrepreneurship.
Definitely. It implies failure isn't always a permanent stain.
Okay, we're nearing the end of our time. Let's quickly wrap up the key points and offer a final thought.
Sounds good.
So we've wrapped up our deep dive exploring this really insightful research on investors and entrepreneurs with past failures. Just to recap the big takeaways.
The main thing is that investors, at least in the equity crowdfunding context studied, don't seem to be just purely failure averse. They appear more rational.
Right. They look at other information, especially stuff that signals the entrepreneur's actual skill level before making a decision.
Yeah, and a past failure isn't necessarily fatal if there are strong, credible signs of skill, like that Forbes 30 under 30 example. It really seems to mitigate the negative view.
Which suggests investors kind of get that failure can be ambiguous, right? Could be skill, could be luck.
Exactly. And the study really hammered home that skill cues were more effective in shifting perceptions than just explaining the failure away as bad luck. Investors want proof of capability.
Makes sense.
So the implications are pretty clear. For entrepreneurs coming back from a failure, focus hard on demonstrating your skills, your achievements, your validation.
Show, don't just tell, basically.
Precisely. And for investors or evaluators, adopt a nuanced view. Look beyond the outcome of the last venture for those underlying signals of potential.
It encourages a more, sophisticated assessment all around.
It does.
So here's something to leave you thinking about. We know luck plays a role, often a big one, in whether a venture succeeds or fails. And this research shows failure and success aren't interpreted symmetrically. So if we, as a broader ecosystem, gained a deeper appreciation for this asymmetry, how might that change things? Could it affect how we support entrepreneurs, how we think about risk, maybe even foster more resilience?
That's a great question. Could it lead to more tolerance for intelligent failure, perhaps? More focus on learning?
Maybe. Definitely food for thought about how we perceive potential in the entrepreneurial world. And don't forget to subscribe to Revise and Resubmit on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you're enjoying the show and want to support us in creating more insightful content, consider becoming a patron on Patreon. Every contribution helps us continue this journey of exploration and discovery. Until next time, keep those minds curious, keep questioning, and keep revising and resubmitting.